All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this last part three of this three-part series in the IT Career Pathways presentation here at the Ignite Hub. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. So next slide, please. Thank you. So again, this is the part three of a three-part series. Some of you probably attended part one or part two, or maybe one of those. In any case, if you didn't attend any of those, you're still okay, because today we're just going to be focusing in careers in data, cloud, and web and app development. Next slide, please. All right, so what are our objectives today? We are going to explore careers, paths in data, cloud, and web and app development, as we talked, and then we're also going to discuss the skills, training, certifications, salaries, and job outlook for these careers, and other helpful resources as well. So for the people that were here last week, it's gonna look very similar, especially when we talk about the salaries and the job outlook, but specifically for these areas and for specific titles within these areas. All right. So next slide, please. So again, for the people that have attended this series before, this is nothing new. But for those of you who are joining us for the first time, a little bit about myself. My name is Eduardo Novoa, and my current role is the Technical Training and Development Coordinator here at the Ignite Hub. I have over 2 decades of experience in the IT industry. I started building and repairing computers back when that was still economically reasonable or feasible. And I've done a little bit of everything in those 2 decades. I've done a lot of support. I've done system administration. I've done a little bit of networking. I worked in cybersecurity, and now I have pivoted a little bit to the instruction side. So I do hold a bachelor's degree in technical management with a concentration in business information systems and a master's degree in cybersecurity. And I currently hold the CISSP certification. For those of you who attended last week, we talked about this certification specifically. It's a cybersecurity certification. It's considered an advanced certification. And so yes, and just a little bit of about myself. I'm an avid reader. I like to read about everything, fiction, nonfiction, historical, fantasy, and I'm a huge fan of anything Star Trek. That's why I'm a Trekkie. So thank you guys. All right, so let's start with the presentation. Next slide, please. All right, we're gonna skip that. And then, so we're gonna start with the data career paths. By the way, just for our friends that are joining us online, if you have any questions or comments, please post them on the chat. And my colleague, Anthony, who's here, operating the technology, will relay them to me. Also, I will like to let everybody know, everybody that registered, regardless if you attended in person, online, or if you could not attend for whatever reason, you will receive an email sometime early next week in which it will contain link to the recording of this presentation. We are recording this presentation and we will post it in our YouTube channel. Also, a copy of this presentation will be included in that email. And the links on the presentation are actually live links, so you will be able to find out more information when applicable. Thank you. So, all right, so we're going to start with data career paths. For those of you who attended the first session, we talked about that there's really 4 areas in IT out of the 6 areas that we've identified, 7 really with the advent now of AI. But we said that there's a big growth specifically in 3 and now 4 areas. Data is one of them. The other one is going to be cloud, which we're going to be talking about after this. And then the other one, obviously, cybersecurity, which we talked about last week. And now AI, which is starting to really have an impact in all of the other areas and on its own. Because again, it's an emerging new field and there's still a lot of people that is going to be needed for that particular area. So data. Why data? It's just to refresh ourselves a little bit. This was like why there's such a big growth in the data analysis, data science, if you want, on the data career paths. Again, just to give a little bit of context on that, it's because we are producing data today like we have never produced data before. We produce data today in one day. Um, I'm talking about the whole world, just all the data that we produce. It's just is a tremendous, tremendous amount. It's really a mountain of data. What we produce in a day, it's equitable to, it is larger. So let me put it in context for you guys. In the ancient world, the biggest repository of knowledge in the world was the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. And that was where most of the knowledge that humanity or the had acquired to that point was pretty much concentrated there. All right. So unfortunately, when the library burned down, a lot of that knowledge was lost for centuries. And actually, that kind of started the Dark Ages. But you can imagine all the knowledge that was if we can make all that data that was in the Library of Alexandria and turn it into digital data today, it will pale in comparison to the amount of data that we're producing now in one single day. So, but this is the thing, is all this data usable? Is it good data? And the answer to that is not. And this is the reason why this field has grown tremendously, because that data needs to be, first of all, we need to sift through that data to see what is good, and then we need to put it into context. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide, please. So again, some of the common functions, and we're going to go through these functions a little bit so we can explain to see what the people that work in this field, on this area of IT actually do. So we're going to start with the data mining, okay? So data mining, again, and I've explained these in the first session a little bit. So if you were here, just bear with us. You will find some new information today. But data mining, as the word suggests, is like mining for minerals. You just start just grabbing and grabbing and just like digging. And again, if we try to make a comparison with, like, let's say when you're mining for gold, basically you have to take down like probably like half a mountain in order to get, I don't know, a few kilograms worth of gold, right? So that is the same thing. When you're mining data, you're just grabbing anything that you can, right? Like the mountain, you are grabbing good stuff, and in between all that stuff, in between those rocks, in between all that dirt, in between all that gravel, there's going to be tiny little pieces of gold. So that is exactly what it is. Data mining is just the gathering of that data. So when I told you that we're getting all that data, we're producing all that data, that's what we are doing. That is called raw data. And so anyway, so that's one function, just grabbing that data. And how the data is grabbed? Well, we produce ourselves tons of data every single day. Every time that we interact with an application on our phones, with a website, we are producing a ton of data. Every time that you do a Google search, every time that you search for a pair of shoes, that you're looking for a particular movie that you want to catch over the weekend, you are producing tremendous amounts of data, like where you are, what exactly is that you're looking for, in what location, at what times, where are you physically located, and a ton of other data that is collected, okay? So again, that is just grabbing all that data. So what to do with all that raw data? Now, just like when you're mining for gold, you need to start sifting, right? You need to start like separating the rocks and the boulders and the dirt from the actual, little nuggets of gold. So that is what data analysis does. Data analysis pretty much kind of separates the good data from the bad data, so it becomes now information. Because when you have raw data, it's just like having a pile of dirt. You have no use for it unless you process it. So data analysis is the first part. With data analysis, you basically separate the good data from the bad data, or the usable data, that's a better term, from the data that is not relevant to you or is just like redundant data, okay? So that is the first. So now that the raw data has become information, is now data that you can use, all right? And that again uses its own processes. If you remember, And that we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about the skills that you will need to go into this area. But if you were here on the first session, I talked about that data in data analysis. We use a lot of algorithms now, artificial intelligence. We use programming languages, and we're going to talk about that. So that through different processes, we now turn it into information. But we want to do something even more with that information. We're going to be able to predict stuff with that data. We want also to give us a more complex picture, and that is done through statistical analysis and predictive modeling. All right, and again, predictive modeling is nothing more than taking that data and comparing it to other data sets, and that's why, for example, Toyota can say, okay, we are going to sell in the next quarter, we are going to be able to sell, I don't know, 5,000 red Corollas, 7,000 white or whatever, because they are comparing it to past sales. They're looking into trends, they're looking into what the buyers are looking. So that's what predictive modeling does. The statistical analysis, again, it's the first step to that. This is where you can start looking at the data and say, statistically, 25-year-old male is most likely to spend 50% of their income in these 5 things versus, like, let's say a 15-year-old woman. So again, because they have different sources of income, different, capacity for purchase. And so what is this group interested in versus this group? So that is the statistical analysis, all right? So that's how data is turned into, first of all, from raw data to information to intelligence to statistical and predictive modeling, okay? Last but not least, this is important. This is the data governance. And this is, the P is where, how do we handle, store this data? And first of all, who owns it, all right? So, and this is kind of interesting because for those of you who are from my age or my vintage, it will be, well, for younger people, it will be today incomprehensible to pay for email. You'll be like, what? Yes, you can get, like, free Gmail accounts, and you can have 3 or 4 of those and free. Back in the day, you actually had to pay to have a service. And it was actually kind of expensive for the day. It used to cost anywhere from $10, $20 a month. And then your storage space was very limited, and we didn't have any of the features that you can do with email today. Again, because you were paying a company to host all that data for you. But now Google is doing it for free. Is it free, really? No, as you know, it is not. Google is getting paid with your data. That's how Google gets paid, and that's why Google can offer you a free Gmail account and a free Google Drive and a ton of different things. In reality, again, you're not paying with money, you're paying with your data. So, and why do I bring this? Because that's where the data governance piece is. As this has grown tremendously, there's a lot of laws and regulations now that apply to data. Some old laws now that now records have become from paper to digital records, now have fallen into those laws. So is how to protect this data. And this is where, as I mentioned before in the last 2 sessions, this is where things start bleeding into one another. So how do you secure that data? So that starts going into the cybersecurity field, right? But data governance, so who owns that data? For how long do you have to have that data? How you should destroy that data? And what data can you keep? What data you cannot keep? And this is for companies and stuff, and this has gone to specific laws in places like California or the European Union that you can opt out now. Have you seen that you can opt out of giving your data to websites, collect certain information? So that's what it's about. Also, for example, in the European Union, you can ask the companies to give you all the data, or a copy rather of all the data that they have collected for you. Not that you will have a lot of use for that, because again, they will give you, yeah, this is all the data, and it will be raw data, but it's the data they have collected from you. but that's what data governance is, all right? So again, if you have any questions, any comments at any time, please post them in the chat. Anthony will relay them to me. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. All right, again, these are some example job titles. This is a big field, but again, and as you can see, all of those, but the last starts with the word data. Data analyst, architect, engineer, scientist, and Aldi Baraguri, database administrator. That was the only data job that I knew 20 years ago, or DBA. There's still a lot of DBAs, they're still relevant, but as you can see, the field has grown tremendously. Most of those are self-explanatory, okay? I wanna make sure that, again, I mentioned this, the difference between an architect and an engineer. And again, just like as their counterparts in the civil world, if you wish, is the same thing. So an architect is the person who designs systems. You know, like an architect, a civil architect designs buildings, or well, here the architect is the person that designs the data systems, the data models, whatever it is. And again, they have to understand everything that the engineer does and what are the limitations and the capacities of the different technologies. The engineer builds whatever the architect says, okay? But the architect cannot come and say, build me this, something that is impossible with current technology, right? So they have to be aware of that. With that said, the data analyst is the position that is considered the entry-level position for this particular field. Again, I want to make a pause here because we talked about that on the first session and the second session, that for a lot of people have started their careers in IT in the support side, specifically the entry-level job for any IT career. Really, a lot of people consider is to be like a help desk analyst, okay? So that is an entry-level job in IT, but entry-level jobs in different areas don't have the same thing. So help desk analyst is an entry-level job for support, but a data analyst is an entry-level job in data, which is a little higher as far as like some of the knowledge and some of the skill that is required for that. Now, another question, can you go straight into the field of data? Data is one of the fields that I believe that you can really go straight into without really having spent any time doing either support or networking or cyber. However, and as we're gonna talk a little bit about in the skills that you require, you will require foundational knowledge of these areas because, again, you don't have to have a deep knowledge in these areas, but you will require to have that knowledge, okay? So with that said, data analyst is considered the entry-level job for this particular area. All right, next slide, please. So now we're gonna start talking about salaries. And again, I wanna explain this, what this graphic means, and we're gonna see a couple more of these during this presentation. First things first, again, as you can see at the bottom of the graphic, there says source, a ZipRecruiter. There's a link, so if you want to investigate a little bit more, you can click on it when you receive your copy of the presentation. And again, as you can see, you can go by monthly, yearly, hourly, and then you can go by like your specific area. This is for the whole of the United States, okay? What does this mean? As you can see, there's a range. It starts like around $30,000 and it goes over almost $120,000. That's a huge range, 30 to 120, all right? What does that mean? Okay, first of all, it means, now, when you say data analyst, there's going to be different levels, if you wish, okay? So that $30,000 may be somebody that just starting, and it may be what used to be called in the past data entry. So in reality, that's not doing a lot of data analysis. It's mostly feeding data into data analysis systems. And also, this represents all these jobs like in all different places in the United States. Now, as you know, there are areas that the cost of living is lower than others. Like, so that $30,000 may be somebody really doing a very low, very entry level type of just data entry in a very area with a low cost of living. All right. That same person doing the same job, like let's say in a high area cost of living, like New York, or even this area. This area is considered one of the highest cost of living areas in the United States, or Silicon Valley, or any other area like that. That 30,000 can easily go into 50,000. So now you see that average right there is making the middle 70 grand a year, okay, or $34 an hour. I will say that that will be kind of a very entry level job in this area for a data analyst, not for a data entry person, a data analyst, but with a couple of years of experience and maybe even just a year or two, you can really grow that into really close to $100,000. All right. Now you see that 117, that is again more experience, knowledge of very specific data analytics tools. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, okay, so it's a good area. This is what is growing. Now let's see why it's growing. Let's see, next slide, please. So let's look at the job outlook for this particular area. So the projected data and reporting analyst growth, data analyst job growth rate is 11% from 2018 to 2028. So it's expected to grow 11%, okay? Just for this particular title, all right? Now there's, remember, they were like data architects, database administrators, data engineers, and there's a ton of other data in there, okay? It's just like that's some representation, but there's a lot more titles within this area. So over about 108,000 new jobs are projected over the next decade only for this particular title. Or again, because they need people that can turn that raw data into usable data, right? And that's basically the job of this particular title. The job analyst does what they do. And right now, there are about 150,000 active data reporting analyst job openings in the US. So a lot of opportunity. Of course, that will be bigger in some areas like this than in other areas, but still a lot of opportunity. So this area is looking at a lot of growth, and not only growth. I mean, there's going to be a continuation of that. So that is pretty good. Now let's go and let's talk about the skills. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Again, before we start here, for our friends that are joining us or have joined us in the past couple of sessions, this will sound familiar. But if you're joining us for the first time, I have separated the baseline hard and technical skills from the soft skills. And I want to start, first of all, talking which one is which. So the technical skills is your technical knowledge, okay? This is what is going to make you thick in this area. But as we said on the first session and also on the second session, and I will keep reiterating this, the soft skills are super, super important and necessary. And we're going to see that in the next slide. But right now, let's concentrate on this, okay? So, and again, these are baseline. And this is just some of the most popular skills that if you look at job postings for data analysts, you're going to see a lot of these different things. These are very specific, as you can see, skills, all right? But it's not, it could be more, it could be less, all right? So let's start with something that a lot of people will say, what? Excel. Yes, Excel is still being used. Believe it or not, Excel is a powerful tool. And Excel is a lot of data, a ton of data. I dare to say a big chunk of all the data is still kept in Excel spreadsheets, okay? But this is not, very how to create a table or how to create a pivot table. This really requires a little bit of advanced Excel skills, okay? So power user, basically. Now, the next one, it's power data visualization tools, knowledge of this. And then there's a few, but these two companies, Tableau and Power BI, which is a Microsoft product, these two are, tools that you can feed that data. And again, it's another way. It's like Excel can create charts and pie charts and bar charts and pivot charts and all that kind of stuff. Power BI, Tableau does that for larger sets of data, okay, for more complicated sets of data. So that's a more powerful tool. And again, Tableau is a Canadian company that specializes in data, and they have a couple of different products. Again, Power BI, it's a Microsoft product, and they're building that into the whole Office 365 team. Okay, SQL or SQL. Um, These SQL or SQL stands for Structured Query Language. And basically, this is kind of, it's not really a well, it is a programming language in the sense that this is how you obtain reports from databases. All right. And there are a ton of different flavors for SQL. There's the MS SQL, Microsoft SQL, the MySQL, SQLite, and then there's the Oracle SQL. But all of them, they are one big family. They're siblings. They are very similar, like how, but this is how you query. If you have ever created a report in Access, you have used SQL, okay? Um, or Crystal reports or any of those things. But okay, but SQL, the knowledge of specific flavors of SQL are usually very they're needed for this area. Python and R, these two are languages. Now, Python is a multi-purpose language. The reason why Python is one of the most popular languages right now, is one of the top 3 languages, is because Python started being a programming language, and it is still a programming language. You can program with Python. But Python has developed also into a very powerful scripting language. And those scripts is how you can sift through that ton of data when it relates to data analysis. Python scripts are also used a lot in cybersecurity, and this is the reason why Python has become a very sought after skill. So Python is not only good for data, Python is good for programming and definitely for cybersecurity as well. R, it's another language. It's a little bit, it's kind of like that's more specific to data analysis. It's used a lot in mathematics. And R, there are different versions. So, but again, that's another skill that is important. And now machine learning slash AI. Again, because now that is being used a lot in this area. This is one of the areas that probably AI is being used the most right now, which is to in order to crunch data. All right. So again, this is an all-inclusive list, but this is some of the skills that if you're trying to get into this field, that they will be good to have. Okay, let's move to the next slide. And again, this slide, and we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these, and we're going to talk about it in this slide, but you're going to see this slides 3 times in this presentation because it's exactly the same soft skills, baseline soft skills for anything in IT, and not only in IT. In reality, these are good in any profession, but there are some specific that are really important for IT around here. So again, communication. Communication, it's super important in anything, in any areas of our lives. And our professional life is a must, is super important, both written and verbal. And when we're saying communication is being able to communicate effectively, we're not talking about like, not speaking with an accent. We all have an accent. I have an accent. We all have an accent. It's about being able to write a good email, a good report, and also to being able to communicate your ideas, your conclusions, your findings in a way that is structured, that is professional. Okay, so that's across the board, but it's quite important. I said it from the beginning. If you are looking in a career in IT because you think that you're not gonna have to talk to people, let me disabuse you of that notion. That is not correct. You will have to talk to a lot of people, clients, colleagues. You're gonna have to talk to general public. You're gonna have to talk to your superiors. So it's just important. So there's no longer the I don't talk to people, that's why I'm getting into IT. No, all right. IT, as I have said in every single one of these sessions, IT is now not a separate department in an institution. Now IT is really a business function because you cannot operate anything without IT, right? So that is why communication is super important. Okay, Organization. Again, I think that I mentioned this before. One of the things about working in IT, it doesn't matter really in what of the fields you work, is that a lot of times, you're gonna get two, three, four things at the same time, and then you need to figure out which one takes precedence. Which one do I need to work in first? And then, what can I put it a little bit on the back burner, but don't forget it, and that kind of situation. So you need to organize yourself, organize your time, organize your resources, okay? Um, and time is your biggest resource, honestly. So analysis, and this is huge. These analysis and learning and research, I think that are very important in IT specifically. They're important anywhere, but okay, so let's go with analysis. Analysis, again, is across the board the capacity of you to look into a problem, a challenge, a situation, break it down into smaller problems, and then also to figure out possible solutions. Okay, so that's what analysis is at the end of the day. It's just you're looking at something and you are trying to see what is wrong here, what caused it, and then how can I stop it? How can I remediate it? What are the ways that I can do that? What is the most cost-effective way? What is the fastest way? What is the way that it makes the most sense for this particular situation? That is analysis, all right? And then learning and research, again, I mentioned this before. If you are trying to get into the IT field, regardless of the area that you chose to go into, this is not the kind of thing that you take a training and then you're good for 20 years or for life. No. IT is an ever evolving field. Doesn't matter which one of these areas or what areas are coming. We don't know yet. So you have to be always learning something new. Okay, technology that it was top of the line 10 years ago, today is obsolete. All right. Not everything, but a lot of it. So again, and that was important to know 10 years ago. Is it important to know now? Yes, it's good to know because a lot of people still use, a lot of legacy stuff, equipment, technology, software, but most people needs to move on to something different. Okay, so that's what is important. So that learning and how you learn that. We mentioned, and we're gonna mention today here too a little bit about certifications but learning and research, you're gonna have to learn on your own. I mentioned before that everything that I have, all the knowledge about IT that I acquired in the past 2+ decades, um, I can say that only about 60% I have learned in school. The other part I have learned about doing it myself, about investigating it myself, being able to learn it by myself, because I cannot learn everything with school. Technically, maybe you can, but it's going to cost you a lot and you don't really have that time. Sometimes you are presented with a problem and you need to find and learn that particular thing like right away. So you have to be able to do that, okay? Um, and the last one, it is important as well, is in interpersonal. These are nonverbal communications. And again, that's that capacity of being able to, act professionally, to being able to have emotional intelligence and to be able to deal with different situations. Maybe be able to work under pressure without blowing off the lead or all that kind of stuff. So it's important. All right. So I spent some time explaining this slide. We are going to see it again twice. I'm not going to dwell on these concepts again the next 2 times. So let's go to the next slide. So we have done the first part of this presentation, which is careers in data. We're going to come back because we're going to talk about the specific certifications for data when we talk in the certifications part of this presentation. But again, if you want to share, by all means, please share it on the chat and Anthony will relay to me. Or this is also good for your own reflection. You don't have to share if you don't want to, but if you want to, by all means, please share it with the group. But out of what was covered in this section, what stood out for you? Maybe it was like, wow, I didn't know that data was that big, or data paid that well, or I didn't really didn't need to have 15 years of experience in IT to get into data. As a matter of fact, data is one of those careers that are, for those of you who are thinking about switching a career, data is probably one of those careers that will be the easiest. And let me tell you the reason why. The reason why is because let's say that you're in the medical field or any other field, and you have spent some time in that field, you have gathered or gained a lot of knowledge about that specific field that people in the IT department may or may not have. So that you can leverage because now when you're trying to, if your organization or whatever it is, or your industry, you can pivot into the data gathering analysis part. Why? Because you are familiar with specifically what you're looking for. So that deep knowledge, being an SME or subject matter expert, is super important. That is what you're bringing to the table. You can acquire those hard skills for the data, and then probably you can transition into that way. So I just wanted to point that out. So maybe that's what stood out for you. So, and then again, are you interested in a career in data? Okay. So let's move on. Unless we have any questions. We have question? Okay, sure.
Uh, Hello, sir. It's me, Amy. How are you today? Um, I'm not sure. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes. So I came in a little bit later, but I was just as you were speaking, I was just being enlightened a little bit because I always thought I did advance T3, well, tier 3 support for
Okay.
Xfinity a long time ago for their internet side and their phone side. So what we did was basically we got I came into the office and I received a long list of tickets. So the first thing I would do is look at the different tickets, and each one of them was either then I would have to troubleshoot it based on if it's IP address management or
Mhm.
if it's something with McAfee or let's say modem or router, wall garden,
Mhm.
commands, and so forth. So they trained us for 12 weeks on all of these things. But I
Mhm.
didn't receive no certification or anything. To me, it was just a job because it was in a
Right.
long time ago, and I've did it for like about I would say like 5-6 years. But
Oh.
however, I didn't know if and then I after that I went to AT&T to help out with their broadbands there and their hotspots.
Mhm.
So I didn't know that to me, I thought in order to be in the IT field, you really had to get like either a degree in computer science or whatsoever. So as a would that ticketing system considered like data analyst? Because I also used to send it if it's something beyond me to someone else, or we'll go over it, with another tier that was higher than me. And so I didn't know if that's what it was because I didn't catch what exactly a data analyst does because I did
Mhm.
receive an interview for it one
Mhm.
time. And I was kind of like, oh, I don't want to go there and lie and say I have experience when I don't.
Right.
So I
Okay.
didn't know if that's something, what it is, because I came in a little later. So I don't know what
That's
exactly.
fine.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for your question. Thank you. It's a good question. And to answer your question, basically what you did before, no, that was not data analysis. By the way, you will receive a copy of this whole presentation so you can, and also we are recording this presentation and we'll send you a link so you can watch the part that you missed. But what you did, and you have great experience, in doing support. So you said that you were a tier 3. So yeah, that is great. You have a lot of experience. Now, can you get into data? Yes, absolutely. There is not, this is the one thing about IT. And we discussed that on the first session as well, that you do not necessarily need a degree or a certification to get into an entry-level job. That experience that you have, for example, speaks tons because you have a lot of knowledge. You use a lot of appropriate words, and so you definitely know your stuff. Um, Now, with that said, we always say that there's value in getting certifications or getting degrees as you want to grow into your career. But there will be some jobs that they will require certain certifications, and probably data will be one of those. But you already have a great foundation. So no, data analytics has mostly to do with taking data, raw data, and turning that into information. What you did was support, and what you described, the troubleshooting steps and everything that you did are amazing. So you do have experience. And can you get into data? Yes. But you could also, with the knowledge that you have, you could also easily get into networking. You have great knowledge of networking. You already talk about IP and stuff. So you have, at the very least, a foundational knowledge of networking. You can get into networking, and cybersecurity is another area that you can also think about. I'm not saying don't do data, but data, it's a little bit different from what you were doing before. I hope that I answered your question. And if you have follow-up questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, you're welcome. So we'll continue. Let's go. Let's move on. So cloud. Now we're going to talk a little bit about cloud. And again, before we get into cloud, I want to. I said at the beginning that cloud is one of those areas that is experiencing one of the biggest growths in IT. And if you were here on the first presentation, you saw that in one of the slides we actually said that over 50% of organizations are using more than one cloud provider. And so let's break that up a little bit and why cloud has become so big. First things first, we are all using cloud. Let's describe what cloud is and how we came up with the term cloud. I don't like it. I've said this plenty of times, but it is what it is. So in the all the network diagrams, if you have seen those, it used to be that everything that was inside your network, it was represented with the servers, the terminals, the routers and the switches and all that kind of good stuff. So it was all represented, and inside, like, let's say a square or a circle, because that was your perimeter, that represented your organization. Everything that was outside the organization was represented with a little cloud, okay? So that's how the term cloud came to encompass a lot of different things. In reality, cloud is any technology that you use personally or in your institution that is outside that network, okay? Let me give you a great example of how you use cloud, okay, in your home network, okay? So you go to Netflix. I got Netflix. I was there yesterday. I was just like, on Amazon Music. So that I am accessing that through my network, right? With the browser and through my internet connection. But those songs, those movies are not neither in my computer nor are they in a server in my home, in my organization. They are in those servers in Netflix, Amazon. So that is really out there. So that is cloud. And that's just one example of cloud. Cloud can be a lot of things. Cloud can be services, can be computers, can be networks, can be a lot of different things. So anything that is not inside your organization that is being run by somebody else and you're basically renting or accessing it for a fee, that is a cloud service. Okay, so with that very general description of what cloud is, let's go to the next slide. Again, let's talk about some common functions of what the people that work in cloud do. First of all, you need to determine what the need for the cloud technologies are for either your client or your organization. So again, let me give you a good example of that. I mentioned this before. About 10 years ago here at the college, we used to host our own email servers, our own Exchange servers here, okay? And that required, again, first of all, having those servers and those backups and having the people that were experts in Exchange. And every time that somebody needed a new account, they needed to create one or delete it when they did no longer need it. They allocated the space for your mailbox, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it became unmanageable because the college has grown a lot. And this is why we started actually offering bigger mailboxes for our students now, because we switched to Office 365. Office 365 is Microsoft, and a lot of institutions have switched to that. So basically, my email now, I don't know where it is. It's in Microsoft servers. It could be in Texas. They told us at the beginning of 10 years ago that most of our data was going to be in Texas, but they could be in Ireland. They could be in Seattle. They could be in Washington, D.C. Doesn't matter. They are not here. We do have administrators that administer that, and that is the managed part, which is the second function. But yes, that data, we no longer have that. That data, those emails, that space, now that's why we have big mailboxes, because we rent them from Microsoft, okay? So, and we pay. The other thing about cloud and why it's so good for a lot of organizations, especially for small organizations and even for big organizations, is that it's elastic in the sense that, again, let's go back to the example of what we were doing here at the college. So when we were managing our own servers, if I wanted to add more storage capacity, that meant that we had to buy more machines, that we had to add bandwidth and all that kind of stuff. So that takes time to procure that equipment, to configure it, to find a place where to put it, et cetera, right? And maybe even hiring another Exchange administrator. So that takes time. But if I want to open 1,000 new accounts on Office 365, I can do it like this. I don't need to have any equipment because it is flexible. You pay data, you pay the cloud services per usage. Either it's a subscription like your Netflix subscription, or it could be like you pay as you go. So you pay, I don't know, $35 per month per user, something to that effect, right? So it is very flexible. The other piece is like, again, going back to the example that I use, especially for smaller organizations, that so just to have those email servers, it requires people with knowledge of networking, people with knowledge of system administration to configure the servers, and now people to administer those Exchange servers, right? So they require a lot of expertise and a lot of investment. So that is another appeal of cloud, that you don't have to invest a lot in technology, and you don't have to expand, you don't have to have a whole IT department in order to do that. You can say, okay, Microsoft or whatever, take care of this for me, right? So that is why cloud has grown so much also. So again, I talked a little bit about the manage function. Manage that data across multiple cloud environments, and also the administration of those accounts, making sure that they are secure. Again, that's where we are starting to go into the cybersecurity piece and the networking piece and the system administration. So this is where things start getting, and again, like I mentioned last week, some companies, they will not have a team specifically for the cloud. Some of their system engineers will be the people that maintain the cloud, all right? So, and system engineering can be considered inside the networking department or the networking group, or it could also even be on the support group. What our guest that had the question, she mentioned that, okay? So she did a little bit of that as well. So now we also have to maintain that data. Okay, that is important. Okay, maintain that data and the functions in the cloud, meaning that you gotta make sure these cloud services are pretty redundant. They're pretty good. If they're usually never down, and when they go down, usually bad things happen. But it's usually the exception, not the rule. So they're pretty resilient. But you need to make sure that your people is able to access that data or those resources in the cloud, because you have given them access, you have given them credentials, and then you're making sure that only the people that you want accessing that is doing that. And that is the ensure part. Ensure that system, service components, and code run smoothly and securely. I forgot to put in there, okay? So again, common functions. Let's go to the next slide. And we're gonna talk again about like some example job titles, okay? So again, you have cloud architect, cloud engineer, same as I explained for the last part for the data architect versus the data engineer. Again, the architect designs the systems, et cetera, envisions the whole system. The engineer actually gets to build it. So the engineer is more on the technical side. The architect is more on the planning side, but they need to understand the technology. By the next one, cloud specialist or cloud analyst, whatever you want to call it, depends on how they want to the job description is written. That is considered the entry-level job for clouds. All right, but again, system engineer. A system engineer could be the one that is managing the cloud. So a cloud specialist or system engineer could be kind of like the same thing, depending on the job description. All right. So let's go to those salary expectations and stuff. So again, and as you can see, this graphic is a little bit all over the place. $40,000 to $205,000. Again, it depends on your level of expertise, on your level of knowledge, on how, if you're just starting getting inside this cloud thing. And again, I don't see anybody making $40,000 doing cloud anywhere in this area. There's definitely not that. even for like somebody that is just starting in the field in this area, that 80,000 should be more or less the entry level point. And as you can see, that 205 is probably like a cloud architect. That's somebody that, yeah, those guys make a lot of money. Again, if you know, when you receive a copy of this presentation, you can do a deeper dive by clicking on that link. All right, let's go to the next slide, just to see the projection for this job. Again, a growth rate of 10% for this particular job. Okay, which are just talking specifically about the systems specialists or cloud specialists. Okay, 10% from 2018 to 2028. So that is growth from what jobs that are already, as you can see in the third bullet, almost 130,000 job openings right now. And they are not only expected to fill those, but that number is expected to grow another 10%. All right. And again, and that's exactly what I was talking about. So about 80,000+ jobs are projected over the next decade just for this particular title. But then in cloud, for all other cloud positions, the job outlook, you know, is going to be similar. So, all right, let's go to the next slide and let's talk a little bit about those hard technical skills. Again, this is not a not all-inclusive list. You may need all of these plus some other ones, or you may need less than this. But again, these are some of the things that if you're trying to get into this particular cloud thing, it will be useful for you, okay? So cloud service platform knowledge, let me explain that. So in the cloud arena, there's basically there's 4 players, but there are 2 big ones right now. For the longest time, AWS or Amazon Web Services was the biggest one. Now, Microsoft with the Azure platform has grown a lot in the past 10 years. They really started from behind. And the reason why is because Microsoft has done a lot of things wrong, but they did this right when they started putting all their services in Azure, right? So Office 365 lives in Azure, and a lot of the other services now live in Azure. So Azure or Azure. So now these platforms, they all work on the same concepts, okay? Unfortunately, the way that they have implemented them is different. So AWS does cloud one particular way, Azure does cloud a little bit different, Google Cloud, I think it does a little bit different as well, and then you have Oracle Cloud. Those are like the biggest 4 players, and then there's the smaller players as well. So that platform knowledge. And then you kind of on this one, just like with networking, we were talking about networking, you need to, after you acquire your general knowledge of networking, you need to kind of figure out which brand, which vendor you're going to specialize in. And again, networking, Cisco is a safe bet because, you know, like 80% of companies use Cisco, but there are other players as well. So it may be worth. So again, same thing here. So I think that you're going to see a lot of AWS when we talk cloud, especially when we talk about certifications. Again, because AWS is still one of the biggest players there. Okay, but I think that it's good to understand both AWS and Azure, at least those 2. All right. So again, database management and SQL. We talk about SQL or SQL on the last one. You're like, okay, this is cloud. Yes, but what is that you're putting in the cloud? For a lot of institutions, what they're putting in the cloud is actually the data, all right? So you still need to understand how to migrate these things to the cloud and how they're going to live there and how you're going to manage that data inside the cloud, right? And then that goes straight into the next one, which is, you know, programming languages, because in order to do a lot of this cloud stuff, again, Python makes another, appearance here again. Again, for cloud, is less than what is being used for data and for cyber, but Python here also makes an appearance. You have JavaScript and JavaScript, because again, you can create the scripts, and then usually is that so you can run these JavaScript snippets in like different applications. And R, again, R, because it is another language that is used a lot in data analytics. Okay, APIs, application programming interfaces. I'm going to explain what these little things are. So when you have something in AWS and you need that data to connect to another thing that your organization uses, sometimes they need like a little connector. Those connectors or something that allows these two things to talk, okay, and exchange information securely and safely, and most importantly, that it's efficiently, okay? So these are APIs, and APIs can be built. There are like generic APIs, or there are specific APIs that need to be built, but you need to understand how they work if you are not developing them yourselves, okay? Or maybe your company has to commission somebody to write these APIs, and then you will need to maintain it, okay? And then when it's time, like let's say this cloud, okay, now everything is working, right? These two things are talking, but then AWS decides, oh, we're gonna do a big update on the platform that you're using. Guess what? Now the API is not working because the API was designed for version 6.0, and now AWS decides to jump to version 7.0, and now the API is broken. So you either need to fix the API or write a new API. You need to understand how these things work, okay? And for the troubleshooting part, which is super important. At the very least, you need to understand how APIs work. DevOps. DevOps is a methodology. It stands for development operations. This is mostly related to projects, and we're going to see this in the next area, which is the web and app development. But it is DevOps sometimes is known mostly for this area, but is any technical project really. It's just a methodology or how you manage projects or the life of a project. So that's why knowledge of DevOps is important. Linux. Okay, so we talked Linux last week a lot when we were talking about specifically about networking and cyber. And we talked about why Linux is important, right? So Linux, and the main reason is because a lot of the tools and a lot of the servers run on Linux, okay? So how do you get knowledge in Linux? Like I told you, I never have taken a single class in Linux. I learned all about Linux by downloading Linux distros, which most of them are free, and just playing with them in virtual machines, okay? So that's how you learn. But the power of Linux, like I said last week, is not knowing just like Ubuntu versus Red Hat. That's just the shell. The real power of Linux is that you being able to use Bash. Bash is the console in Linux, which is the same console in Mac OS. It's just called something different, but it's called terminal in Mac OS. But Bash, that little window, the power of Linux is not on the shell, is on the core and what you can do through command line. So knowing command lines in Linux, that is important, okay? And security concepts. Again, you're working in the cloud, you need to understand how that data, again, the data, the cloud platform itself is secure. What it could be insecure is the way that you're accessing it or the way that you are portaling into the cloud service. So you need to understand how that you need to secure that. All right. So these are some, again, some knowledge that technical skills that we will require for this. Let's go to the next slide. And again, I'm not going to spend time here. We went ad nauseum explaining these things on the previous section. Again, but as you can see, they are exactly the same. Nothing has changed. It's still very applicable to this particular situation. All right. So yes, thank you, Anthony. Again, if anybody wants to share or if we have any questions, but out of what was covered in this section, what stood out for you, especially with the cloud? And then, are you interested in a career in cloud technologies, right? And again, it could be starting to gather that knowledge. You, for example, are the person that had the question earlier. That is actually a very good area that you can get into as well, because you do have a lot of the foundational knowledge here. You just need to get the specific knowledge for depending on what job or what company you would like to work in. All right. So, okay, no questions? We're good? All right, let's move on. I think I had a break here, but we're just going to move on because we still have some more stuff to cover. All right, so let's go now with web and app development career paths. I think I explained this. Yes, I explained this in the first session, and I said These two, in reality, can be two separate areas, but the skills are quite similar. And you're going to see that there's a little difference in the hard skills, but the functions are very similar for both areas, either if you are in web development or app development. There's slides differences, and we're going to touch on that. But again, if we go to the next slide, the functions are the same for both paths. Doesn't matter if you're trying to develop an app or you're trying to create a website. You still, first things first, you need to meet with the clients to discuss needs. And that client can be your boss, can be your company, can be, another department, or it could be a specific client, an individual client, a client of your company. So first of all, what is that you're trying to do? What is the so that's the planning meeting, and this is where these communication skills come really handy. I've said that one of the main things about communication is that communication is not only you providing, information to other people, but you being able to absorb, interpret, and analyze the information that the people is giving to you. When you're meeting with clients, when you're meeting with people that may or may not have a technology background, they may explain to you things in, for lack of a better term, just plain language, right? Plain, and so that's the joke, tell me that in English. Um, so you need to be able to ask the proper questions, okay? So when you're talking to a client, first of all, match the language that they are speaking, all right? You can always use technical things and explain to them what that means, but you cannot speak to them in technical jargon and expect for them to understand and to respond to you in kind. So again, meeting, what is that you're trying to do? What is you're trying to accomplish? What it looks like? What is your budget? Or what is the goal of this thing, whatever you're trying to do, either an app, an application, or website, right? By the way, before we move forward, when we're talking about yes, web development, there's two aspects to this, and this is where it's a little different from the app development, is that you have people that specializes what is called the front end, and people that specializes what is called on the back end. And there are people that specializes on both, and that usually are called full stack developers. Now, let me explain front end, back end. So front end is what you are all familiar with, which is how you access something, which is a website, right? And you access that, so you create a website through a browser, right? And I'm sorry, you create a website, it always runs inside a browser, right? So because the browser is an application. So that's how you interact, okay? The back end is the database, is whatever is interacting on the other side. So let's go back to the example of Netflix, right? How come that when you log into your Netflix account, it's not exactly where you left off that chapter that you left unfinished, and then it has your list of recommendations and your list of your where you want to watch next, okay? So how that happens, all that is stored in the back end. The front end, nothing is stored in your computer or in that browser. In that browser, the only thing that is stored are some cookies, and that's it. All right. So, and maybe your password, if you like that, I don't recommend, but anyways, that's a different story. So the back end is like what happens, and there are two different set of technologies, if you wish, for the front end and the back end. So the back end is going to be a lot more programming, and it's going to be things like Java and Ruby and other languages. And here on the front end is going to be like HTML, CSS, that kind of stuff. All right, but that was the differentiation that I wanted to make. Then you need to modify software programs or websites. Okay, so now it's done. Maybe you didn't do it. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you need to update it. All right, but maybe somebody else did, and they are now calling you and say, look, you need to update this website. Okay, all right, okay. So, all right, or modify the software program. Now we want this to do this extra thing, or you need to secure it, okay, whatever it is. So design, create application systems or websites. Again, so after that conversation with the clients, you start like, okay, let me start designing, and that's prototyping and stuff. By the way, we do offer here at the Ignite Hub a couple of boot camps that are kind of like intro to both coding and app design. Just FYI, the ones for the spring are already sold out, but be on the lookout. If this is something that you're interested, that's another thing that we kind of offer here for free. All right. So this is where you design, create those prototypes, and then it does that continuous conversation with the client, and then you actually get to build either that application, that website, whatever it is, and you do that through writing programming code or using programming tools, right? So common functions for both things. Let's go to the next slide. All right, example job title. So software developer, computer programmer, web designer, web developer, coder. All right, so what is the difference between a coder, a programmer, and a developer? Coder and programmer are sometimes used interchangeably. Usually a programmer is a higher level, a coder, but they're very similar. The difference between a programmer and a developer is that the programmer is very akin to the engineer. The programmer is an expert on the programming languages and creating those programs, writing the code, basically, okay? Or writing those scripts, writing the Java, see where they put it. So, but the developer is a little bit more, and that's why they make more money. The developer is the person that actually gets to design the thing, okay? And then sees through it. So programmers may work for or with the developer in developing a website, an application, etc., through the cycle. The developer sees that the whole project, okay? Hope that makes sense. Next slide, please. So I chose on this one app developer, okay? And as you can see, again, I don't see where that 35,000 probably came. That's probably a coder, a very basic entry coder in somewhere not around here, but a full app developer here in this area is definitely making more than $109,000. A full developer, that may be a programmer, could be a programmer making that kind of money in this area, but a developer will make well over $100,000. I don't know about 176. Yes, probably yes, after years of experience and having a great portfolio. But I believe that an app developer with some experience in this area, yeah, that 110 will be the minimum. Okay, so let's go and see job growth for this particular thing. All right, so and this is we're looking specifically for this app developer. Okay, so 21% growth. So that's good. That's really good. That is so right now there's 284,000 new job applications are projected over the next decade. So wow. And right now, so that's those 284,000 is on top of the 280,000 that are actually job postings right now, active applications. Okay, so really good area to be. That's why the coding keeps on coming up as a very good thing. Now, this is another area. Can you go straight into being a developer without no IT knowledge of experience? I will say a developer probably no. You need to have at least very foundational knowledge, understand, because you need to understand how your application is going to be running in that particular hardware or hardware platforms, and also how it's going to go to the network. So you need to have an understanding. Now, can you be a coder or a programmer without a lot of knowledge of experience in IT? I think that the answer to that one is yes, but you will need to prove that you have the knowledge and that you have written or created or coded something, okay? So that is going to be the threshold. So you need to prove knowledge and application of knowledge. We've been talking about this for the past 3 weeks. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about, and here we're gonna have actually 2 slides for hard skills, because this one is for an app developer. The next one, I believe, is gonna be for web developer, okay? So, and again, you're gonna see a lot of programming languages here, no surprise, you know, okay? So programming languages, and this one, for this one is going to be languages like C++, C Sharp, Objective-C, Python, again, still for programming. Java is big. So out of that, Swift. Swift is the language that Apple came up with in 2016, and that is the language that you will need if you are trying to program anything for Apple, either be the iPhone, the Mac, the Watch OS, the tvOS, anything that goes into the App Store needs to be programmed with Swift. So, but Swift is there as they use Objective C before, so it's from the C family. The syntax is pretty simple. So if you are familiar with C++, C Sharp, or Objective C, or even C, Java 2, or Python, any one of those, learning Swift should not be that difficult. Okay, now UI design, user interface design. Again, I think that that's super important because this is how your users are going to be using the application, right? The UI design. So it's choosing the right fonts, the right colors, and being inclusive in the design. And when I say inclusive, I mean taking into consideration people with disabilities, which I recently learned is a lot larger population than I thought it was. And their gamut of disabilities is very big. I didn't know how many people was colorblind, and why you shouldn't use certain specific colors on websites, because it will be very difficult for colorblind people to read certain colors. Okay, they will see gray. They wouldn't. Okay, so it's that. So the UI design, back end computing. Again, this is for the technical. I'm sorry, for an app developer. All right, you need to understand what is at the other end. Just like with the web development, you need to understand what is happening. So when you are trying for your application to communicate with that end, how is that going to how's that going to work? Okay, cross-platform development, again, because now that we have different platforms, and so let's say that you're trying to do an app. There are some apps are exclusive for Android. Most apps are available in both sides. But if you compare them side by side, they may be very similar, but they're not 100% exactly the same because they operate in different platforms. Okay, so are you going to specialize in one, or are you going to specialize in different platforms? What is it? Product business management. This is important, especially for those developers. They need to understand. Again, they're not going to be probably doing the marketing. They're not going to be running a lot of business, but they need to understand, because if you're trying to a project, you need to make sure that it's something that is successful, that is going to be appealing to, that is going to be profitable, stuff like that. Agile development, just like we talk about DevOps, Agile is another methodology, and like the name suggests, is a way to develop applications instead of having to wait for something to be finished to start the next step, that you can develop some things in parallel, so you can develop things faster. And this came about because, I'm going to give you a great example for those of you who are gamers. You expect every year a new and better version of the game, right? 1 year is a very, very compressed time to develop a new version, to develop new routines, new characters, new worlds, whatever it is. So you cannot do that without the traditional methods like waterfall, or so that's why Agile was developed. So knowledge of Agile development sometimes is also very important. Last but not least, testing and troubleshooting. For those of you who are programmers, coders, developers, or you understand that most of your time is spent debugging, correcting errors, testing, troubleshooting, fixing those errors rather than the coding itself. Okay, so that is a big part of this, and you need to have those skills. All right, let's go to the next one, because the next one is for a web developer. Okay, and this goes to what I was talking about. So the front end coding versus the back end coding. So for front end, again, what I mentioned: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. For the back end, it's going to be more like Java, Python, PHP, Ruby, etc. So again, user interface, user experience, UX design. So in the past, on the last one, we talked about being very concerned about the UI, right? How you interact, because in an application, that's exactly how you're going to use it. This is where the placement of the buttons and where does it lead. But here, the user experience design, it's more applicable to websites, right? And that has to do with how the overall usage will be. While in an application too, you will have to navigate from one to another. You always want to have a button that always takes you back home, right? That you don't have to do 3, 4, 5 clicks just to go back home, right? So that kind of situation here. So user experience is like, how many clicks did you have to do until you got here? Was it easy to use? Was it just kind of like, oh, I can figure this out? So was intuitive, that's the word that I was looking for, or not? Security and data protection. Again, that is actually good for both. And the reason being for that is, I mentioned this before as well. 15, 20 years ago, we used to build applications, systems, networks first, and then think about how we're going to secure them later. That's no longer the case. Now you need to start building all these things with security in mind. So when you're building a website, when you're building an application, you don't think about securing it after I finish the program. No, you need to start thinking about secure coding and secure how this is going to be secure, okay? And again, testing and troubleshooting, same as last one. All right, let's go to the next slide. And we're gonna see for the third time, as like I promised, the same slide, okay? I cannot stress it enough, especially on this particular one, the communication and interpersonal piece is essential. All right, you are going to definitely be talking to people. You're going to be interacting with people. You are going to be thinking how people is going to use your product. So you have to put yourself in their proverbial shoes. Not don't wear your client shoes. Just you know. So that is why these skills are super important. You need to think like your clients. You need to put yourself, think how your client's going to use this. You're going to have to communicate with them. So anyway, all of this important on this particular area. Those two super important. All right, let's move on. Again, out of what was covered in this section, what stood out for you, big area of growth, well paid. Um, a lot of people are really interested in this, and this is why we here at the Hub, and we're going to discuss a little bit more about resources. We developed these two boot camps. Again, they are offered for free, and they usually sell out pretty fast. We're trying to expose people, and not only here, but you know, if you before you think about, and then are you interested in a career as a web and app developer? If your answer is yes, my recommendation would be that you take something akin to what we do here at the Hub. We offer it for free. Not everybody's going to do that, but at least that you try it before you buy it, kind of situation. So you need to have that little test drive, because this could be something that you're theoretically interested in. You say, oh, this sounds exciting, this sounds well paid, but when you need to do it a little bit, to the extent that you go like, okay, I want to pursue it, or I don't want to pursue it, and I'm going to look for another area, okay? I'm saying this because when I started my career, or my education rather, in IT, I thought I was going to be a programmer. And that's the first where I started taking a certificate program, and then I learned HTML, CSS, you know, C++, and all that. And then I realized, you know what, this is not for me. But that knowledge did not go to waste, because, you know, it's crazy, but a lot of those concepts were important to my career, because, you know, programming is used in a lot of different areas. But it's funny that now, 20 years later, now I'm here at the Hub, and coding came back, and I'm actually preaching coding and trying to introduce people to coding. But yeah, so especially now also with AI, this becomes a lot more relevant, I would say, for you to at least have some very foundational knowledge of coding or coding concepts. So again, food for thought, all right? Okay, let's move on, unless there's any questions. All right, so this again, for those of you who joined us in the past couple of sessions, this may be a little bit of a refresher. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm going to go to some stuff that I believe is important, and that's degrees versus certifications. Let's go to the next slide. So again, as our friend mentioned earlier on today, IT is a is an industry that experience and skills are the main thing that people is looking for. But certifications may be something that is either required or preferred in a lot of job postings. Also, degrees may not be required, but may be put into the preferred category. All right. So can you get into the IT industry without a degree or a certification? The answer is yes. Without a degree, I can say definitely yes. Without a certification, maybe, because even for some entry-level jobs, they want you to show either certification or coursework that shows that you have acquired the knowledge. The second piece, the experience and skills, is like I mentioned before. You need to prove somehow how you have applied that knowledge. Now, that is the hard part for people that is trying to get into the industry. They have now their certification, they have their degree, or they have taken courses. They don't have the experience. So now they're hitting a wall. So, and that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about, like, how can you show experience? And then, yeah, the easiest way is like, yeah, I've been working on this team for the past 3 to 10, 15 years. I have experience. That's the easiest one. Paid full-time job. But there's also other ways. You can do voluntary work, right? You can also do internships. I know they're hard to get, but internships, either paid or unpaid, are a way to get. Especially for the last area that we talked about, the web and app developer, you need to have a portfolio. You need to show that you have coded this, done this. You know, I have this GitHub project, whatever it is, so you need to show. Okay. So that was, we deviated a little bit from our topic, but I think that was important. So again, a degree can provide a breadth of exposure to various aspects of IT, as well, or some hands-off experience. I wouldn't say lots, but some hands-off. It's also super important. A degree will be definitely necessary for you to advance or to get into management. And like I mentioned in the past 2 sessions, management, there's a lot of management in IT because anything needs to be managed. And that's where the real money is on reality. Okay, being a technician is exciting. I loved it. But being a manager is where, like, usually the money is. All right. So again, there's no cookie cutter path. So a degree, it's kind of wide. That's what we're trying to say there. Okay. Now, certifications are more narrow. Why? Because they show that either A, you have foundational knowledge, okay, because they're specific to an area or a skill, and they are generally required on most job announcements. Okay, I'm going to say that that's for the most part, yes, true. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, industry certifications. We're going to focus a little bit on certifications here, right? So next slide. All right, so a couple of things about certifications. All right, first of all, again, let's go for the first bullet. We already talked about that. They're either required or preferred on job postings or career positions, okay? So a degree may not be, but a certification might, okay? So IT certifications require preparation and training, passing a test, and continuing education credits, in addition to fees for testing and maintenance. Let's unpack that a little bit. And again, for the friends that are joining us, this is going to be a refresher, but I think it's important to explain it again. So how do you prepare for a certification? Or how do we obtain? Let's go back. How do you obtain a certification? You go take an exam, you pass it, you're certified for the most part, okay? So how do you get to that exam? If you think that you have enough knowledge, go ahead and take the exam, all right? Do not recommend that. But if you think that you're good, do it. The other part that you can acquire knowledge is because you've been doing it for so long. For example, when I got my Security Plus certification, yeah, I did take a course, and I'm going to explain to you what type of course I took. But I knew a lot of the concepts because of the job that I was doing, a lot of coursework that I have done already. So I was like, okay, all I need is somebody to tell me specifically what they're going to be asking me for this certification. All right, so we're going to get to that in a sec. You can also go ahead and try to learn it yourself through YouTube videos. Again, don't recommend it because it's all over the place. And it's better if you have some kind of structured knowledge. The other piece is like you can buy the book, try to prepare yourself for the certification, another path. Now let's go to the more realistic rather, options. Number one, A, and the one that I recommend the most, and I'm going to explain the why. Take a preparation course in your local community college. It could be Montgomery College, and we actually have a slide here in a minute, but it could be any community college. Really, community colleges have two areas: the credit programs, your academic programs, and your non-credit classes. So these will fall into the non-credit piece. Actually, the hub, is under the non-credit area of Montgomery College. And our sister program, the ITI, the Information Technology Institute, offers a lot of these courses. Now, why am I saying this is probably the best option for a lot of people? This is the best option for people if you're trying to actually gain the knowledge. So if you don't have the knowledge already, because you have never taken a course or you have never worked in this area, you're just trying to get the knowledge so you can get to the exam, this is the best way. Why? It's going to cost you in the hundreds of dollars, okay? Which is affordable, I think, for most people. Also, it's going to be spread out a little bit more. So usually it's like 12 to 16 weeks. So you get to digest that context, and then you can learn it a little bit more, okay? So that's number one. This is the reason why I usually recommend this for most people. The second piece is that you can go to these training institutes. Nothing against them. I never use them, but it may be the right solution for you. Why? Because these are more expensive. So instead of hundreds of dollars, usually these courses are thousands of dollars, couple $1,000s. The other part is like they're usually a little bit more compressed. So it may be good for you if you just need a refresher, you need to get ready for a certification, you need to get the certification in 3 months, maybe that's your best bet, okay? So again, the only thing that you have to be careful, and I'm not saying that all of them do this, but a lot of these training centers, sometimes they sell you what I call the glossy brochure. They tell you, hey, here, take this course, $3,500, and I am telling you, in 6 months, you're going to be making $100,000. I'm going to say possible, but unlikely. All right. So just that's the only part that sometimes I don't like about that. The third option is what I call the nuclear option, and the one that I've done for my certifications. Why? And that is boot camps. Boot camps are super expensive. You're talking $4,000, sometimes even more. They are basically in 1 week, in 4 or 5 days, they cram you all that knowledge. So they go 100 miles an hour. Why did I choose this option? The good thing is, like, sometimes they do include the voucher for the test, which we're going to talk about the test in a minute. Why did I do this? 2 reasons. First of all, I had most of the knowledge already. I just needed to know what is really covered on this certification. B, because the college paid for it, so I didn't have to pay for it. That's the reason why I took him. All right, so that's another option. Again, now let's talk about the test. Again, you need to pay a fee for the test. So you pay, and that fee can be anywhere from like $150, I believe, on the lower end, to over $1,000 for some cybersecurity certifications, especially those GIAC certifications that are super expensive. The certification exam for the CISSP that I took used to be like $700, $750, something like that. I don't know where it is right now. Now, okay, so what happens if you fail that exam? Do you get a freebie second chance? No. You get a discounted price for the second try, and usually you have to wait a couple of weeks before you have your next try. All right? So there are a ton of ways that you can prepare, and then, there are even mock exams, and they say, do not go and take the exam unless you score at least 80%, whatever. So what happens after? Okay, you passed the exam. Great. Now you are certified. For the most part, that's all you need for most certifications. Okay, so very few certifications require prerequisites, or most of them, you just go take the exam, boom, you're certified. And we're going to talk about what happens after you're certified. Some certifications, so you got to investigate this a little bit, okay? Some certifications, like, for example, the CISSP, the one that I currently have, in order to be certified, you need to pass the exam, which is a grueling exam. I'm not going to lie. B, you need to prove to ISC Square, the organization that actually confers this certification, that you have had at least 5 years of full-time paid experience in at least 3 of the 9 domains according to CISP of cybersecurity. On top of that, you're going to need another person that has a CISSP to basically sponsor you. All right, but that's mostly for most certifications that is not required. Most certifications, you just take the exam. So now, great, you pass the exam, you're certified. Now what? Am I certified forever? No. Most certifications only last 3 years. So at the end of the 3 years, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can retake the exam, or B, during those 3 years, you can acquire those continuing education credits or CEUs or CPUs, whatever. So depending on certification, it may be that you need 80, you need 120. And how do you acquire those? There's a ton of different ways that you can do those. So you can either take a class, you can attend a conference, you can watch webinars. That's usually how I get mine for my CISSP. Okay, so that's how you every 3 years you need to do that, okay? Second, you need to pay yearly maintenance fees, okay? Again, and those maintenance fees can be as cheap as $75. I think I paid something like $200 for my yearly, for my CISSP, just to maintain it. What do you get for that money? Usually you get access to opportunities to maintain, to obtain these CEUs and other benefits from, specific to the certification. All right, so, wow, that was a lot. All right, now let's talk about the types of certifications. So certifications can be vendor neutral or vendor specific. So vendor neutral are certifications like the Network Plus that just says, okay, so you have knowledge about computer networks, all right? That, again, it's just about computer networks, or it could be about anything else. Now, a vendor-specific example, for example, in the networking area will be CCNA. CCNA stands for Cisco Certified Network Associate, and it's done by Cisco. So what is the difference between Network Plus and CCNA? Again, Network Plus proves that now you have knowledge on computer networks. CCNA proves that now you have knowledge of how to configure, deploy, maintain, patch Cisco devices, or how Cisco does networking, right? So you have to investigate which one makes more sense. Usually the vendor neutral for entry-level jobs those are the ones that are usually required. And depending on the company that you go to work for, they may ask for a vendor-specific ones. And again, IT certifications can cover general areas like Network Plus within IT, or can qualify professionals in specific skills like some of the certifications that we're going to see for programming. Next slide, please. So certifications. And this is just a small sample. There are more, all right? But these are some of the ones that you're going to see a lot. So for data, which we started with data, so the CompTIA Data Plus, again, that is a vendor neutral. That is just going to kind of explain to you what data structures are and how data is managed, and the difference between raw data and all that kind of good stuff, all right? So that is, again, vendor neutral, and that covers a wide area. Now, let's go to, for example, the next one. The Power BI Data Analyst Associate, okay, issued by Microsoft. Okay, again, that is specific on that tool, which is Power BI, all right? The next one, Tableau Certified Data Analyst. Again, it's issued by Tableau and is by using their product, okay? And then you also have, this is where things start getting, again, enmeshed. We have the AWS Data Analytics. So, but that one actually is not an entry-level cloud certification. It's a specialty certification that it says that, this is how you do this data analytics within AWS, all right? So next one, please. Cloud certifications. And again, as I told you earlier, you're going to see whole lot of AWS. There are other ones. There are also Azure certifications for Microsoft, but as you can see, they run the gamut. So the beginner is always going to be the AWS Cloud Practitioner. So you will take AWS Cloud Practitioner before you do the one that we mentioned before, the AWS Data Security. So again, AWS Certified Solutions Architect, okay? AWS Certified SysOps Administrator, AWS Certified Developer. So again, as you can see, advanced and entry level, all right? So a ton of things because the cloud is also, I'm sorry, a big area. Next slide, please. All right, so this is for software and web development. And this, again, these are vendor specific, again, like PCEP. This is the Python, and you have two in Python. The entry level, there's the PCEP, the PCAP. It's is the more advanced one. Again, both of them are by the Python Institute, and AWS Certified Developer, again, AWS. So again, and there are a ton more, but this is just a sample of some of the certifications that you may see. Okay, so now that we have talked about certifications, let's go to the next step. All right, again, so now we are going into the last part of this presentation. Is Chris here? Great. All right, so these are your resources, okay? The resources that some useful resources that can help you in your career and search. I talked about the ITI. I already told you this is our sister organization here within Montgomery College. And in the next slide, please, it's just some of the courses that they offer. And again, some of these courses are for foundational knowledge. So you have no knowledge of computers whatsoever, you know, but you want to get into the IT field. So probably you want to get the ITC just so you can get some foundational knowledge. There's also specific for certifications. Again, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but as you can see there, we have IT foundations, we have different courses. So not all of these are offered all the time, and they are not offered at all locations, so you need to check. And again, that is true for any community college or any workforce development institute that will do with that. So that is one way that you can acquire this knowledge, right? So let's go to the next slide. Again, we're going to send this presentation to you guys, so you'll have a little bit more about this. All right, so another great resource for you guys is the Ignite Hub. If you're here tonight, it's because you have found us and you thought that this is useful. All right, so again, as you know, that's our website. You're pretty sure familiar with that, I'm sure, because you registered. So again, just to cover some of the services that you use. So we have a couple of guest speaker series. Actually, earlier today, we had our Future of Tech Launch and Learn speaker series. And again, those are free, and you can, they are hybrid. You can attend either in person here. If you attend in person, you'll get free lunch. If you, otherwise, you can join us online. And today we were talking about wellness for people in the tech field, a very interesting topic. So very interesting things that maybe can help you. The other one may be a little bit more useful to you guys, the fireside chat, because those are people that come and talk about their career paths and how they got to where they were. So check those out, and if there's anything that interests you, please subscribe. I mentioned those coding boot camps. Okay, again, you want to test it. You want to test if you really like this coding thing. You want to try it rather. And then, you know, also we have the coding camp and we have the app development boot camp. So, okay. And the IT career pathways workshops, you're attending one right now. And we also, and this is quite important, this is why in a minute, we're going to hear from a good associate of ours that is going to expand onto these career workshops and career coaching. All right. So I would like to introduce you guys to Mr. Chris Stephens. And he is, next slide, please. So he works for Career Catchers, and we have partnered with them to provide a couple of different things for you guys. And again, they're absolutely free. So Chris, thank you again for being here tonight and for explaining to our friends what is career coaching and the career workshops that you do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Eduardo. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Stephens. I am a career coach, and I work with a nonprofit organization called Career Catchers here in Montgomery County. And we are partnered with the Ignite Hub to provide several services. Every month, I facilitate a career skills workshop Our next one will be on May 13th.
Mhm.
So we encourage you all to sign up for that. It's a Tuesday. But in addition to the workshops, another service that the Ignite Hub provides is one-on-one career coaching. So if you're interested, um, I am available to work one-on-one with you. If you're interested in IT and you're a resident in Montgomery County, you can take advantage of this service. So, what does career coaching look like? So, we discuss goal setting and career planning. If you're looking to get a start in the IT field and aren't really sure how to begin, we talk about that. Maybe you're already in the IT field and looking to advance in your career or transfer to a different specialization. That's fine too. No matter where you are, we can sort of tailor the sessions to your career goals. I also help with things like, putting together resumes, identifying appropriate job opportunities, doing interview prep, everything like that sort of support that goes into finding a job. And if you're interested in any kind of IT training or certifications like Eduardo has laid out tonight, we can discuss how to make that happen as well. So, it's pretty comprehensive. If you're interested, you can use the QR code on the screen here to schedule an appointment. And I'm also going to put my email into the chat. So again, if you're interested in the one-on-one coaching, please feel free to shoot me an email, and we can set up a time to meet either virtually or in person, whatever is most convenient for you. So I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at our workshops and maybe one-on-one as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. And again, this is a great thing, and it's completely free for you guys. So take advantage of these. Some of the career workshops that Chris does are specifically for people that is like looking for a job. So we have topics like um, resume writing or the job of finding a job, how you structure that job search. And another one that is quite important is like those transferable skills. Like the person that, we talked to earlier today, she has a lot of experience. A lot of the skills that she has can be transferred to other areas in IT. So this is where a career coach can help you a lot. We've been talking about all these skills that you need, both take the hard skills, the technical skills, and also your soft skills. So you need to start thinking and making a list of the skills that you have and the ones that you need. So a career coach can also help you with how can you acquire those skills that you are missing. So you can create a resume that is appealing and eventually successful, in getting the job that you want. So this is a great service. And again, I think that career coaching is something that everybody that is trying to get into the industry or trying to switch careers to IT definitely needs that. So it helps a lot of the missteps. One of the worst things that you can do is and there's, we don't know what we don't know. That is a fact. But the worst way to find out what you don't know is in a job interview. It has happened to me. It will happen to us all. But the more prepared that you are at that point, when you have that opportunity, it's you want to be prepared to answer those questions. So that's where a career coach will help you a lot. So thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate that. And yeah, thank you for including your email on the chat. Guys, if for whatever reason you cannot schedule an appointment with the QR code, make sure that you make a note of that email so you can email Chris directly. So thank you so much again, Chris, for tonight and for everything that you do for the Hub. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So we're starting to wrap up here. Next slide, please. Okay, before we leave, I still have a couple of things for you, so don't leave yet, if you'll be so kind. So this is, again, if you want to share it, and if there's any questions, I am going to open the floor. But out of what was covered in this presentation, what stood for you the most? And again, this could be a personal reflection question, but I really want for everybody to really do something about the next bullet. Okay, so what action or actions will you take after attending this presentation? So it doesn't have to be big. Again, the action or actions could be, oh, I'm going to investigate a little bit more about these careers in cloud. I kind of that interested me. Let me research a little bit more about these certifications. Let me see what is this thing. Or it could be, I'm going to make an appointment with Chris. I'm going to attend the next career workshop. So, or it could be, you know what, I think that I'm ready. I'm going to start investigating a little bit more about this specific area. So again, what action, or it could be, I'm going to check out the ITI catalog, see what is there, maybe see how much the course is going to be, blah, blah, blah. So it could be a lot of different things. But make sure that what is that action? So make it for yourself. Make a commitment with yourself of what action are you going to take after this presentation. All right. I'm going to open the floor for any questions that you may have at this moment. Of anything that we have covered through this presentation or any other thing. No? All right. Well, thank you so much. Before you leave, next slide, please. So thank you again. You're going to receive a copy of this, and that's my information if you want to reach it to me directly. But most importantly, in the next slide, take a minute, please. Actually, this takes no longer than 2 minutes for you. We ask everybody to please complete this survey. I believe that Anthony is also going to post the link in the chat. So since you're already in a computer, maybe if you're in a computer, maybe you just want to click the link and it will take you directly to the survey. We ask you to complete this because it really helps us, and we really look into this data. We want to make sure that we are offering something that is of value to you. And again, I would like to thank you for being here tonight. You could have been anywhere, but you decided to spend 2 hours with us, and I really appreciate that. I hope that this was useful to you. And but then again, let us know through the survey. Was this useful? What would you like to hear more about? What other stuff would you like to see at the hub? So take that survey for us, and we really look at it, and then that's how we plan for future programming at the hub. For those of you who attended tonight, again, I'm very grateful that you spend this time with us. For those of you who attended all 3 sessions, I'm extra grateful to you. And I hope that this was useful to you in some way, shape, or form, that at the very least, it gave you a little bit more clarity. One of the most difficult things when you're trying to get into a career in IT is how much information is out there. And it could be confusing and it could be overwhelming. So I hope that if this helped any of you, at least to either affirm a commitment or an idea that you have, or that maybe clarified something for you. That is all I really want out of this series, and I hope that was fulfilled. So thank you so much to all of you. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we hope to see you at the Ignite Hub again soon. Thank you so much, and thank you, Anthony, for your help tonight. Thank you.